Magic Soup by Halyn Chang. Chapter 1. Weird Wizard. One night, a wizard walked up to the Lonely Puppy Middle School. The wizard was wearing a long robe with yellow and orange swooshing stripes. In his left hand, he carried a large suitcase. In the other, a large staff. Since he was quite old, a wizard, and visually impaired, his large staff was a walking stick, a wand, and a blind cane, all in one.
"Direct me to the Lonely Puppy Middle School,"
commanded the wizard to his staff. The staff promptly made a humming noise and directed the wizard to the front door of the school. As the wizard entered the school hallway, he commanded his staff,
"Find a dark classroom with no windows."
When the staff found a dark classroom, which was the science lab, it hummed quite loudly. The wizard stepped inside the room and started unbuckling the large suitcase. As he unpacked the suitcase, he pulled out a large old book, a pile of multicolored striped body parts that looked like they were from some kind of monster, and a French horn. Grabbing up the French horn, the wizard played a few notes very loudly. And the pile of monster body parts started to move about. Then the wizard picked up the empty suitcase and walked out of the school, leaving behind the spell book and the multicolored monster. Chapter 2. Morning Madness. At 7:30 a.m. that morning, Dan and KJ walked into the schoolyard. They had been friends forever because their dads were best friends. As they walked into their homeroom class, they were shocked to see little lizard-like creatures crawling all over the place. Their teacher, Miss Kathy, was running around the classroom shrieking as 10 little lizards scurried after her.
Oh, help! No, don't get me! Oh!
Quite worried, Dan and KJ rushed to Principal Madeline's office to report that there were lizard-like things in their classroom. When they got to the principal's office, they saw lizards there, too. They were crawling everywhere. Principal Madeline, in a panic, was standing on her desk. She was hopping back and forth and jerking her arms up and down as she yelled.
Shoo, shoo, shoo! Oh, shoo, shoo!
KJ made a quick escape and ran into the hall in fright. But Dan found a school supply box and started carefully putting the lizards inside. As he was picking up the last one, Principal climbed down from her desk and slumped into her chair. She was still shaking, with a dazed look on her face.
"She is not able to help me."
After Dan left the principal's office, he headed to his homeroom to pick up more lizards, when he received an even bigger surprise than finding the little lizards all over the school. A big monster, a dragon monster, was slinking down the hallway. The dragon was very colorful. It did not exactly look dangerous, but Dan was very shocked, so he just stood and stared. It had a green head, a pink chest and arms, teal tummy and legs, and then came its tail. It started with yellow, then turned to red, then purple, and ended with a marvelous spring green tip. The antlers on its head were brown, but its teeth were dripping with purple slime. There was a great amount of trash surrounding the dragon and stuck all over its body. There were crunched-up plastic lunchboxes and brown paper bags with tooth marks. Potato chips, juice boxes, plastic spoons, and fruit cups were falling off the dragon and littering the floor. There was a smell of peanut butter in the air, and the dragon left a purple trail that looked suspiciously like grape jelly.
"Looks like the sack lunch people have no lunch today."
Chapter 3. Soup Spells. Running back into the hallway, Dan thought about where to put the lizards he was carrying in the school supply box.
The science lab is a good place for them.
Finding an empty aquarium, Dan carefully put the lizards inside.
Stay here, little lizards, until we find out where you came from and what to do with you.
Dan carefully put the lid on the aquarium and was leaving the classroom when he saw a large book lying on the floor.
What's this?
The heavy book had a gold picture of a dragon and mysterious writing on its blue leather cover. It was larger than his brother's high school textbook and looked very old. Dan grabbed up the book and went to find KJ.
KJ will like to see this. He collects old books.
Once in the hallway, Dan wondered where to find KJ. As he neared the boys' restroom, he heard KJ shouting at the top of his lungs.
Off! Get off! Off! No, yuck! Off! Get off! No! Off!
Dan ran into the restroom and saw KJ jumping around with lizards all over him. Dan started once again, collecting baby lizards and putting them into the school supply box.
Hold still, KJ. I don't want to hurt the little lizards.
Get them off me!
Calm down, KJ, and I'll show you what I found.
Wow, where did you get this old book?
I found it in the science classroom where I was putting the lizard in an empty aquarium.
What empty aquarium? We only have the little turtle aquarium and the big snake aquarium.
I don't know. The big one was empty. I just put them in there until we found out what to do with them.
KJ started turning the pages of the old book. As he came to page 4, the book started making a very strange sound, and KJ quickly closed it. Dan grabbed the book and opened it. When he got to page 4, once again, the book made a strange sound. Dan, not being one to be afraid, just stared. Suddenly, bright, colorful lights flashed out of the book. Finally feeling scared, Dan threw the book on the floor. When the boys were brave enough to open their eyes, the book was lying on the floor and a scrap of paper was by their feet. KJ picked up the scrap of paper.
Where did this come from? Is it soupy?
I must have torn the page out when I dropped the book. Keep reading, KJ.
Soupy doll instruction. You point at the pot. Put far from the pot. Foot to kid. Stop the pain.
The words did not make sense at all because the page was torn through the middle. Dan looked at the paper knowingly. He had read a lot of fantasy books.
I think it is some kind of spell.
Soapy dolly.
Much to KJ's surprise, red liquid started leaking out of the end of his finger. Then it started streaming out of his finger and making big puddles on the floor.
Blood! I'm bleeding! I'm losing my blood!
And what I smell? Tomato soup?
Who cares about soup? I'm bleeding!
Yeah, I think your blood smells a little like a tomato soup. Have you had some kind of weird surgery or something?
Oh, it does kind of looks like tomato soup. It smells like tomato soup. It tastes like tomato soup.
Dan took the scrap of paper and read the words again.
Super dolly instruction. You point at the end, don't put your finger in the ball, put far from the ball, put to stop the pain.
Upon hearing the spell again, KJ looked at his feet and started hopping around.
What's going to happen to my feet? Help me, Mommy! I don't want to be in pain. Call the doctor. Call 911. I don't want to be in pain.
Pain? What pain? What are you talking about, KJ?
When Dan said, "Grrr, pain," suddenly the tomato soup stopped shooting from KJ's finger.
No need to call my mom or doctor. I'm home right now.
Dan picked up the strange book and KJ opened it to page 4. Sure enough, that page was torn. Dan fit the scrap of paper back into the book. It was a match. Now they could read the instructions for the spell with all the words.
Soapy dolly. Instruction for tomato soup production. Make sure you point at the pot. Don't put your finger too close to the pot. Keep your finger far from the pot by about 1 foot to keep from splashing. To stop the spell, say Garpain.
Dan started laughing.
What's so funny, Dan? Stop laughing.
Help me, Mommy. Call the doctor.
Cut that out, Dan.
Before KJ could get out the door, Dan spoke up quickly, changing the topic.
Say now that we have all of the spell instructions, we can serve soup to the kids that had their lunch eaten by the dragon.